Welcome to Beacons of Light. We've got another fantastic show for you today. Our guest is Sister Martha Abshire.
Hey, Matt, thank you for inviting me, Michael. It's a great privilege to be here.
Well, it's awesome that you're here. And one of the things, we met through Franciscan University.
Absolutely.
And you are the campus minister.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah. And so
I've grown up since then. I'm the vice president for mission.
That's it. Well, talk a little bit about the university and why it's so important.
I think what most people don't realize, of course, they remember it as Our Lady of the Lake School of Nursing. And I'm a graduate of the School of Nursing when it was still downtown in 1972. And the education was really rock solid, I can tell you that. I used to call it the SEALs training of nursing at the time. And because I had gone there, then when I served in Haiti, I absolutely fell back on that education that I received. And so as the nursing education grew beyond a diploma program, which was a hospital-based program, then it became an associate degree. And again, it grew even more so. So our nursing program suddenly became the College of Nursing and Allied Health, because the medical center said, look, we need radiology techs, we need venipuncturists, the phlebotomists, and so it became that. And then soon we started adding in other things that then, about 3 years ago, the accreditation people said, look, you're a university. Because by then we were, a doctoral program, about 4 master's programs, and we were more than just nursing. It's still our kind of a flagship. But now we have 4 theologians on faculty. 5 years ago, the diocese asked if we would take on the diaconate education. And when we sat down and looked at the requirements, we had half of the program already in place for the offerings that we did for our students. So by adding on what the deacons needed, we now can offer a bachelor's in theology. So people don't realize we have 2 doctoral programs and we have 4 master's programs and still our own nursing. We have pre-med in biology. It's called a degree in human sciences. So if you want to be a physician or a physician assistant, you won't have to take zoology and all this other stuff. It's strictly human biology. So anyway, it's grown to quite more. We have about 1,300 students at the time, still commuter. And we're still working on getting a beautiful building and to make it a little bit more solidified, but it's just grown by leaps and bounds.
Well, that's what we want to talk to you today about, how you've grown. You're Vice President of Missions, sister.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that spiritual journey. How did you go from where, from early life to where you are today?
I grew up in a rice farming community 8 miles south of Crowley. And when I say that, literally in the middle of the rice fields. My dad was a rice farmer and also a Cajun fiddler on weekends. So I grew up with the Cajun music in the family. And then we also had, it was a working farm. I'm the oldest of 4. And my parents were very intelligent. My mom dropped out of school at 14 and a half to get married, which was not unusual in those days. My dad, at the age of 7, dropped out of school to start working in the rice fields because all the kids dropped out of school in his family. My grandfather had had a massive stroke and couldn't work. So in the 20s, because he was born in 1920, so when he was 7, he was literally in the rice fields pulling weeds by hand.
Wow.
In order to gain $1 a week to help support the family. So I came from that real strong working family. We were poor. We didn't have a lot of money, but we weren't hungry because we raised everything. We had sheep and cows and pigs and chickens and ducks, and our family garden was 5 acres that we worked by hand and raised all of our vegetables. So that work ethic. Now, my dad, being a musician, would come in on Sunday morning, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, depending where their gig was. He was up for 6 o'clock Mass. Faith was extremely important in my family. My mom, schooled us in the Baltimore Catechism in those days. And I tell people, my parents had a perfect reason for leaving the Catholic Church. We had a Canadian, French-Canadian priest. Remember, we're in the country, in the middle of nowhere, a very large Catholic church. And people say, where did all the people come from? Well, that area was very Catholic. And my brother, I was older, I was in I think, 5th grade at the time, and he was going to have his first communion. He was denied by the priest because my dad was a musician, and all musicians were no good.
Wow.
And so it hurt my parents deeply because, if anything, my parents were very devout, very devoted to the church. We tried appealing, it didn't work. And for 5 years, we did not go to church. My mom continued teaching us Baltimore Catechism, and she was the one, and my father too said, understand something. That is an ill man speaking, not God, because your father's a good man. And as soon as they changed pastors, we went, my younger sister after my brother, and my brother, we all went back to confession. Father had quizzed us. The two of them made their first communion, and then I went into the confirmation class because my mom continued to teach us. And so that was what bounded our family so spiritually. That was such a deep root in faith. And I think without knowing theology, that was because of my parents being committed to our faith as Catholics. And after I decided to enter the convent, after I broke my engagement to my good Southern Baptist fiance, but anyway, that's another story. I remember entering the community in '67 and really meditating and praying about the gift of vocation. You know, it's a gift. It's not something someone earns. And as I was really reflecting on that, I thought of my parents during this time when they could have left the church easily. And they didn't. And it was like the Holy Spirit just helped me to understand the gift of my vocation was really a gift to my parents and saying thank you for your faithfulness. Of course, I shared that with them, and we had a lot of cheers around the table when I said it, but it's just because we just don't realize the impact that we can have on others around us. So my siblings never left the church. They strayed a little bit, but they came back. But it was that rock solid faith of understanding. It's not about that priest or, whoever it is that's there, they can help or hurt. But it's really about the faith, and it's about the Blessed Sacrament and the great devotion to Our Lady.
Yes.
And so that deep faith, not founded on theology, but rooted in true faith, that I think I owe my vocation to. Absolutely.
That is a beautiful story, and what a message that nothing can get between you and God.
Absolutely nothing.
And the church is the way, but sometimes there's
it's
some
the building. It's the building.
Yeah.
It's the people in the building that form the church.
That's right.
And so we have to take ownership of that. We, as being the church,
right,
is to be able to understand, and look, we're going to have good priests, we're going to have bad priests, we have good sisters, we have sisters who beat kids, okay? In school, I never went to Catholic school, so I didn't experience that. I went to public school, go Crowley gents. But anyhow, but it was because the faith was so important,
right,
that's what sustained, the family. But to know that and to claim it, and then to live it. We talk about the new evangelization.
Right.
The new evangelization is to know who we are as Catholics and proclaim it. And to live it. Don't put on a show. If you put on St. Clare said that. She said, to live Christ is not to imitate Christ, it's to live Christ. And so to be integrated with that. And the stronger our faith in the Lord, that's what shines through. It's not about what we say, it's about also how we live.
And it's between us and God.
Absolutely.
That's the
Yeah,
relationship.
that's the relationship.
So when, yeah, I
It's
mean,
impossible to have true faith if you don't have a true relationship with the Lord.
right,
You know, otherwise it becomes a mimicking
right.
as opposed to a true imitation. A mimicking or a true imitation, a true living. And so, hey, look, you know, we've all, I think of St. Teresa of Calcutta, you know, and her thing about her dark night of the soul. She didn't feel any consolation. Yeah, it's not going to be always ha, 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 happy kind of thing. You're going to have those struggles.
Right.
But to fall back on what the essence is really about, you know, and that's the Lord.
And so all of your spiritual journey is built on that faith foundation.
Absolutely.
That your parents, and they did exactly what you described. They lived
They
it.
lived it, absolutely. Someone, when I went to missionary school at the Maryknoll, with the Maryknoll Fathers, they have, it was called cross-cultural ministry. Because, you know, and quite frankly, when I taught catechism, taught religion in Eden Park right here in Baton Rouge, that's going to a different culture. As a young 19-year-old, I was thrown into an environment that was totally different. Thank God I had enough common sense to do a good job, I suppose. It was, you know, for catechism, you know, CCD. And so, but when I went to Maryknoll, you know, that was one of the things that to understand, where did you get your vocation to be a missionary? Or do you think of it? And I think of my dear dad who loaded me up in the car one day and said, I must have been about 10 or 11, baby, let's go visit the Matthews. You know, that was a family down the road. And they were very poor. And little tiny, their house was not probably any bigger than this scene here, okay? And I remember sitting there, and of course that was the days you sat and you didn't. Children were seen and never heard, okay? And so here I am sitting there, and I'm watching my dad and talking, and the old lady, she was very elderly, and her 2 bachelor sons. And she said, you want some coffee? My dad said, oh yeah. Of course, this is all in Cajun French. And so she goes over, she takes the little demi-tasse, and she squishes it in this quasi-clean water, and had put on the pot already and poured in the coffee, and you could see the grease floating on it from the cup not being totally clean. Now, my dad had a terribly weak stomach, and I thought, he's not going to drink that. And Daddy sat there, sipped the coffee. We sat maybe an hour and a half. We got back in the truck, and I said, Daddy, why did we come? I can still hear myself saying, Daddy, why did we come? That house is dirty, those roaches everywhere. And he said, baby, everybody likes to have company, and nobody comes to visit them. And I said, Daddy, but you drank that coffee, and that cup was dirty. He said, I know, baby. When people come to the house, what do we do first thing? Well, serve coffee, Daddy. He said, that's right. And he said, they gave me a cup of coffee to show the hospitality, and they gave it out of their poverty. And he said, people always like to have company, and no one comes to visit them. That's why we should come. I mean, how can you, you know, and I think that's where my love of the poor comes from as well. I grew up in a very poor family, money-wise. I was rich in the fact that my parents had faith. I went to school, worked hard. They emphasized the fact it's not what you have, it's what you do, what you do with what you have. And so there was always poorer than us. Extra vegetables we produced, my father would bring it to the families that didn't have as much. And so those kinds of things, you know, and it saddens me to think that there are children today who don't have that kind of foundation and education and formation.
Right.
You know, one of the things we say at the university is, you know, our mission is to educate and form Franciscan servant leaders of all faiths. We educate the intellect, but we form the heart.
Right.
And so that's, from my own background, that's exactly, I was so lucky. Now, my parents weren't perfect. They weren't saints, but they were very good parents, and I was so lucky.
And that's what wealth is all about. So often we think about wealth in terms of money. But when we come back, we're going to talk about wealth and why being rich in your faith life is so very important.
My Bicycle Journey, a book that tells a story. It educates, it promotes, and it also provides some leadership. Take the time to purchase this book, and St. Vincent de Paul benefits from all of the proceeds of this book. Please, if you would, give St. Vincent de Paul a call and let me know what you think of My Bicycle Journey.
For over 20 years, the St. Vincent de Paul Community Pharmacy has served our area. We provide prescription medicines for those who have nowhere to turn for this most basic healthcare need. Please, if you need your medicine or you know a family member that needs their medicine, contact us. Kay, how can they get in touch?
383-7450.
Give us a call today and spread the word so that we can ensure no one goes without their prescription medication. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul's first cookbook, Taste and See, is the gift which helps share the goodness of the Lord with those most in need. Featuring recipes from Chef John Foles, each chapter begins with a short story about one of our special work programs. To order your copy of Taste and See, please call the Society or visit our website. Help multiply blessings for the neediest in our community. Where are you rich? Where are you wealthy? It should be your faith life. That's what we should all embrace, to grow in our faith, to be rich in faith. Joining me is Sister Martha Abshire. We're talking about that faith journey at Franciscan University. That's what you do, service learning. You try to help people recognize God and also
serving our brothers and sisters. You know, one of the things I'm really proud of our service learning program, and it's mandatory. People have said, well, why do you make it mandatory? Well, because for those who've never had the opportunity to really serve or to work with people less fortunate than them, we make it mandatory, and it's actually done through the theology program that they have to be able to, they can choose. We have, I think, in 17 parishes, civil parishes, we have over 100 community partners. So our students can actually work in an interest, whether it's with the elderly or with the homeless or with kids or whatever may be their desire, to be able to look at rendering some type of service. And at the end of their requirement, they have to do a theological reflection paper that's based on our 5 Franciscan core values of service, joyfulness of life, respect and love of all life, humility and justice. And so to be able to get them to integrate that, and it's of all faiths, you know, regardless of your faith tradition. If you want to do it in your Baptist church, do it, but it's got to be in context of their Franciscan servant leader heart that we're trying to form. So it's been a good experience, and I'm proud. We have been designated as a Carnegie School of Excellence regarding volunteerism and our service learning program.
Well, I know at St. Vincent de Paul, we've been blessed.
St. Vincent de Paul.
We've been one of many charities that the university is very active in, and there's a program too called Fran U, where you get the younger students in, and they do just a remarkable job. And
it's incredible. You know, we have our young people that we've started doing. It's called the Franciscan Experience.
Yes.
It's a week-long boot camp.
That's it.
In
That's
theology
right.
and service.
Right.
That our theologians and our campus ministry developed for rising juniors and rising seniors.
Right.
And we take them and we go to St. Vincent de Paul. And you know, it pushes them out of their comfort zone. And you know, we basically do the same thing with our students in our service learning.
Right.
It's like we challenge them to do something that they've not done before.
Right.
Or it might be an interest. because part of being Franciscan is to be in that service context. St. Francis served the lepers. Men who were interested in joining St. Francis during his time had to go care for the lepers. And if they couldn't do it, then they were obviously not called to the religious life in that Franciscan movement. So it's the same concept of going. St. Vincent de Paul is a great place. I'm the spiritual assistant for the secular Franciscan fraternity. And we serve whenever there's a fifth Saturday, that's our slot.
Yes.
And then the students from our campus ministry, our Catholic Student Life, also go and volunteer. So it's part of that formation of the heart.
Yes.
That we really work on. We educate them in being competent professionals at Fran U.
Right.
But it's bringing in
Right.
that formation, as I call it, a formation of the heart.
Yes.
And Dr. Holland, Tina Holland, our president, and I'm just so privileged to be there because I had 40 plus years in healthcare. Then I was thrown in higher education. I've had an education these last 8 years, let me tell you. But it's been wonderful to see, and they're not necessarily young. The average age of our students is 26. And so we have, single moms. We had a young man, a father of 5 children who graduated, I think, 2 years ago. His oldest child had Down syndrome and had a lot of heart issues. She was in and out of the hospital. He really wanted to be a nurse, but he had this child that he needed to provide for. He was a truck driver, saved up enough money where for 4 years he didn't have to work and came and became a nurse. And now works full-time as a nurse at our hospital. But he did that. This was his lifelong dream. Here he was in his late 30s, early 40s, finally fulfilled his dream. Those are the kind of students that we have who are serious, who want to make a difference in life. And especially, but with my own background growing up of, not being in a poor family, but as my parents always said, we look out for those who are even poorer than us. And to always be, we are our brothers and sisters keeper. If we truly believe in God,
Right.
we have to acknowledge the fact that we are brothers and sisters. We may be like brothers and sisters and we fight, but we should always reconcile.
Yes.
And truly understand that we are our brothers and sisters keepers. I think we've lost that sense.
Well, you said all those years in the healthcare industry as a health provider, and then you went to higher education and you learned, you grew.
Another component.
How do the students affect your spiritual life? I mean, it sounds like you're continuing to grow in their wealth as you see them kind of get out of that comfort zone at St. Vincent de Paul, visiting the poor, the homeless, or whatever the case, and they're making a connection on how they can affect the lives of others.
What I think, and I have said that even after I lived 11 years out of the country between Haiti and at the Mother House in France, we have so many more good people than bad.
Oh, yes.
And when I say young, it's anything under 50 for me is young right now. But anyway, to see the generosity and the sincerity, and to see how they are concerned, to want to make a difference in other people's lives, it just gives me so much hope for the future. With our Franciscan experience, high schoolers, and when I see them growing in this awareness of their faith, it's like this aha moment. And it suddenly means something going to church. It means something to pray. And they say that, and they said, Sister, I never realized that that was something missing in my life. And I say, oh my God, I have so much hope in the future of the church. Yeah. It gives me hope. And so to see this dynamic, and I have seen the best and the worst in people. The 6 years I lived in Haiti were during the very violent years. We had to lay on the floor, didn't know if the bullets were going to come through the house. That was 30 years ago I started the mission. And so, If I never care for another torture victim again, I'll be happy, because I was there during the military, were the police force, one of the most diabolical groups you can imagine. And I've seen how they love to beat people, how they loved to torture people or to frighten people. I've seen the devil in the face almost, but I've seen the opposite side where absolute goodness resides. We were in a prayer procession and the military blocked our road. It was a prayer procession, and we knew it was, when I say we, it was the people of our parish that wanted to do something, and it was, prohibited. But they said, no, we'll do it again. Anyway, the parish priest, who was a young French priest, said, you want to go? I want to tell you, this is the only weapon we have. And he held up the Bible. The only protection we have is this, our body. Understand, even if they heckle us, even if they try to make us say things that we're not supposed to, we're still going to do it. And they'll try to dissuade us. We're walking in prayer. Mm-hmm. We're walking in silent prayer. We're walking in song, but it's prayer. And when they blocked the road, the 4 soldiers with guns, immediately the young man in front of us and the one behind us said, sisters, come. They locked arms and made us stand behind them in case they started shooting. You just see, and I remember going home that night and sitting before the Blessed Sacrament thinking, oh Lord, I'm so unworthy of that kind of generosity. And it was all of a sudden, it was like the Lord slapped me in the face and said, it's not about you, Martha Ann. It's the love they had in their heart to be able to do that. And that's when I realized that the gospel is a 4-letter word, L-O-V-E.
And that is wealth. That is where the wealth of whether you're ministering through healthcare, ministering to the poor at St. Vincent de Paul, that is what it's all about. The gospel is L-O-V-E. It's all about God's love, spreading that love and being able to be embraced by it when we need it the most. We hope you've enjoyed today's show on Beacons of Light. We'll see you again next week on another great episode.